And we do have some breaking news out of the Doomsday Cult Mom murder case. Attorneys for Lori Vallow Daybell have filed a motion for a new trial.
Lori Vallow Daybell was convicted on the 12th of May 2023 for the murder of her two children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow, as well as the murder of her husband's first wife, Tammy Daybell. Her husband, Chad Daybell, is also awaiting trial for these murders, and we've all been waiting for updates on that as well. However, the shocking development since Lori Vallow's conviction is that her defense team is apparently calling for a new trial. Are there actual grounds for this? What new evidence has come to light? The Lori Vallow Daybell saga continues. Join us as we go over all emerging charges for the Doomsday Mum. Lori Vallow's defense attorneys, Jim Archibald and John Thomas, had recently filed a motion for a new trial to be conducted for Lori Vallow on grounds of juror misconduct.
Having seen all the evidence, all the thousands of hours spent, how would you describe the efforts of law enforcement?
You know, I think they did a good job with what they had. I don't know that you ever can really train for something like this. I think they did a good job with what they had. You know, you question some things that happened, and I'm sure there's a reason for it. I'll probably never know, but you question, had some things been done different early on, would any of us be here?
Do you have an example of one of those things?
Well, and we didn't consider this during our deliberations because it was clear to us, the instructions were clear. Arizona, evidence and testimony is only for demonstrative purposes.
Sure, yeah.
And we all were very, very respectful of the rules, the directions that we were given. But now being removed from that, I think the police department in Phoenix had some significant red flags that, had they been followed up on, you know, maybe we're not here.
Do you mean after Charles was shot?
Before and after.
Before and after. Before, yeah, you're right, before he was shot with that body cam.
From this interview, Saul Hernandez, who served as juror number 8, has been accused of knowing information he was not supposed to be privy to during the trial, as that evidence was not presented in court. As you know, outside communication is not allowed for jurors. The court does not want outside information or public opinion to influence the jurors. This is why only facts presented during the trial are used by the jury. Breaking this rule is not necessarily a crime, but a juror's misconduct that might get such a juror dismissed. There are instructions from the judge that the jury is expected to abide by to prevent this misconduct. But sometimes improper influence can still happen, even with the intention of following the instructions and guidelines. Say a juror accidentally overhears a conversation about evidence the judge ruled inadmissible in the trial. These things can happen, and accidental or not, there can be consequences. Suppose it is proven that a juror was actually influenced by outside information as a result of jury tampering, jury misconduct, or simple mistake. In that case, the judge might declare a mistrial and grant the convicted defendant a new trial. But while proving that a juror was illegally influenced can be difficult, it is possible. So it seems like Lori Vallow's defense team may believe they have a case here because they have filed a motion to this effect. In the filing, Lori Vallow's attorneys claim 3 noteworthy things. The first is that the court misdirected the jury in a matter of law as it related to the jury's instructions on conspiracy. The filing also claims that the court misdirected the jury in a matter of law as it related to the amended indictment. And lastly, the filing claims that a juror revealed that the instructions were confusing and that the juror was aware of evidence not submitted to the jury. This claim in particular appears to be the driving force of this motion, because if this can be proven that one or more jurors who served in the Lori Vallow Daybell trial knew information that they should not have been privy to during the trial, then Lori Vallow Daybell might just get a new trial. Saul Hernandez, who served as juror number 8, came forward to speak on this. He acknowledged that he and the other jurors were not allowed to search the case by any means or even look it up on social media. They were not allowed to watch any videos or news about the case throughout the trial period, and he expressed that he followed every guideline until the trial ended and he could go home. He emphasized that he first learned about the issue of zombies when he watched Dateline NBC that Sunday night with his wife. We believe we speak for everyone when we say that nobody wants or even believes that this motion can go anywhere, but still, it was a rising discussion that was disturbing to say the least. Criminal defense attorney Matt Mangino spoke to the Law and Crime Network. He was asked if there was anything from what Saul Hernandez said that could be used as evidence to support the motion of Lori Vallow's defense team. The defense attorney started off by appreciating the basis of the motion. After all, everyone deserves the right to a fair trial, and similarly acknowledged that it is the duty of Lori Vallow's defense team to zealously represent their client. However, in his opinion, he strongly believes that they do not have a case. The interview with the juror in question, Saul Hernandez, was conducted after the trial was completed. At that time, he was free from every obligation of not looking up the case, so whatever he had learned after the trial could not be grounds for a new trial.
I think his explanation here is quite credible, that, hey, I watched Dateline 2 days after the trial was over, and I learned these things, and when I was being interviewed by the newspaper about them, I thought that these were red flags. Not that I learned that while the trial was going on, or that I learned it outside of the trial while it was being conducted, but I learned it after the trial was completed and I watched a television program. So I don't see a lot of merit to the motion based on what we've seen so far. So I don't know that it's going anywhere.
Then there is also the argument that some of the jurors were confused about some instructions on the use of the available evidence. Apparently, the jurors had used a piece of evidence cited as evidence 404B for demonstrative purposes, and maybe they were not supposed to do that. This might not mean anything, but now the defense lawyers are claiming that the first trial of Lori Vallow should be thrown out because there was some sort of conspiracy going on within the jury. Again, we believe that Lori Vallow's defense team is simply grasping at straws here. When talking about instructions that the jury must follow, you should know that these aren't just any instructions that the lawyers put together randomly prior to their closing arguments. These instructions have previously been used in other cases, so it's nothing new, and it's nothing that should confuse any member of the jury. Just like the prosecution is tasked with the burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt, it is also the job of the defense attorney to explain the jury instructions either during the opening statements or in the closing arguments. So, going by this logic, if any member of the jury was truly confused about the instructions of the process, Lori Vallow's defense attorneys had the opportunity to close any window of confusion by explaining what the terms are to the jury. The points in this request for a new trial is nothing more than a zealous attempt to give Lori Vallow a second chance in court to get a lesser sentence or even be acquitted. There is a fair chance that they may prove juror misconduct, but as far as the jury instructions being confused goes, it is simply not an argument that can get this motion granted. Now, amidst all this, don't forget that Lori Vallow Daybell is facing additional charges in Arizona. Brandon Boudreaux may be one of the luckiest people alive, as he managed to survive the murderous conspiracy of the doomsday couple, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. A day following her murder conviction, new charges came up against her. On the 12th of May 2023, Lori Vallow Daybell was convicted for the murder of her children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Joshua Vallow, as well as conspiring to kill her husband's first wife, Tammy Daybell, and now she's facing attempted murder charges in Arizona. The officials in Arizona put out an official statement, saying that they were bringing up charges against Lori for conspiracy to commit murder against Brandon Boudreaux. In addition to that, Lori is also facing murder charges in the death of her former husband, Charles Vallow. According to the records, Lori Vallow and her brother Alex Cox conspired to kill Brandon Boudreaux back in October of 2019. Brandon is the ex-husband of Melanie Palowski, who is Lori's niece. That day, Brandon had reported an attempt on his life. At the time, he told the police that he had been pulling into the driveway at his New Gilbert rental when someone pulled up in a grey Jeep Wrangler, pointed a gun out of the window, and opened fire on him. Somehow, Brandon survived this attack and even reported his suspicions that his ex-wife had a hand in it.
Brandon Boudreaux and his ex-wife Melanie are in the middle of a nasty child custody battle. According to new court documents, Boudreaux claims he has evidence that Lori Daybell's brother Alex Cox tried to kill him outside his Gilbert home on October 2nd, 2019. In his filing, he says because it's an open investigation, he can't yet reveal all the evidence, but that Melanie was involved and that a detective will testify to what he's saying.
According to Brandon, Melanie was one of the few people with that address, as it was a new apartment and he had barely spent a month there. Of course, before charges for such a case can be brought up, there would be sufficient evidence to back it up. The authorities could access video footage from a storage facility in Idaho that shows a man and Lori Vallow Daybell unloading a back seat and a spare tire from a grey Jeep Wrangler, the same vehicle that Brandon claimed his attacker drove off in. There is still debate about whether this is Alex Cox or Chad Daybell.
That Alex Cox was seen on surveillance video in a storage unit in Rexburg on that same day. But recently enhanced video from that day shows that the person seen with Lori looks more like Chad Daybell and not Alex Cox.
The detectives on the case also have digital evidence that puts Alex Cox in the Gilbert area near the time of the shooting. Alex Cox died of natural causes in December of 2019, so while he may not be alive to stand trial for attempted murder, Lori would be. She is currently the only one being charged in this shooting, but of course, that's not all. This is just one of the crimes that is being linked to her in Arizona. Lori Vallow has also been indicted on a charge of conspiring to kill her fourth husband, Charles Vallow. He died in July 2019 and was shot by Alex Cox. Initially, this did not seem like a murder case because the detectives deemed it a self-defense kill. Fortunately, the evidence brought to light during the first murder trial of Lori Vallow Daybell reopened this case. According to the reports, Maricopa County had been awaiting her conviction so that she could be extradited back to face these charges. While these cases are building up, we could take it back to 2019 to review all precipitating events leading up to these new charges. For these cases, there is quite a lot to uncover. So Charles Vallow has been shot to death. Now free of her husband, Lori Vallow took her kids, Tylee and JJ, to their new home in Rexburg, Idaho. Of course, now we know she did this to be closer to Chad Daybell. Within a month, her two kids would disappear and would later be found dead. But before this time, someone parked near Brandon Boudreaux's home down in Arizona and waited for him to pull up in his driveway. As soon as Brandon arrives, he notices the mysterious Jeep. He saw when the back window was rolled down and also noticed what appeared to be a rifle with a silencer placed at the end of it. According to Brandon, the weapon was fired within seconds. With some luck, the bullet struck Brandon's vehicle, which was parked right next to him. Immediately, the shot was fired, the window closed, and both the driver and the assailant at the back of the car drove off. Brandon was unsure what to do. In the heat of the moment, he decided to call the police rather than go after the Jeep. Brandon might not have known that his estranged wife, Melanie, was in cahoots with her aunt, Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell's end-of-the-world cult, but he did suspect that she may have had a hand in this attack.
After the shooting, Boudreaux hired private investigator Rich Robertson. Boudreaux said he saw a rifle with a silencer come out of the back of a Jeep Wrangler. Police say it was registered to Lori's ex-husband, Charles Vallow. Vallow was shot and killed in Chandler by Alex Cox months before.
He thought this was likely because he and Melanie were going through a divorce at the time, and being that she also knew where his new apartment was, Melanie was his suspect, and he was vocal about it to the police. Somehow the case went cold until now that the world knows all that Alex Cox, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell did. Brandon's theory of who tried to kill him has more relevance now. But as we see with all criminal cases, there will always be the question of motive. Why? Why would the Doomsday couple and their henchman, Alex Cox, want to kill Brandon Boudreaux? There could be a number of reasons why the Doomsday cult had their eye on Brandon Boudreaux, but whatever it is would most likely boil down to money. Melanie was going through what you could call a bitter divorce. It is possible that she was brainwashed by the Doomsday mastermind, Lori Vallow. It is also possible that she was telling her aunt about her marital problems and trying to get advice while Lori Vallow was taking it all in, just so she could find a way to take advantage of the situation. We mean Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell are the kinds of people who walked around with the belief that they could kill anyone, just to forge ahead with whatever sinister doomsday plan they had in mind. Melanie Palowski later testified against Lori Vallow, revealing that Lori Vallow had tagged Brandon Boudreaux a zombie. Now, this is something that came up during the first murder trial. On more than one occasion, Lori and Chad had labeled a person a zombie just so they could justify killing the person. Maybe if Brandon Boudreaux had suddenly died, Melanie would have been entitled to his assets. For Lori, it is always about the money. As the prosecutor proved in the first trial, Lori killed her children for money. She also conspired to kill Charles Vallow for his money. In Charles's case, she thought she would receive more than $1 million from his death. Sadly, she was wrong. Even before this time, her third husband, Joe Ryan, also died under similar circumstances. Joe Ryan is Tylee's father, who died in 2018 from a heart attack. If Lori had something to do with this, then she would get away with it because the Phoenix police reviewed his case again, and it was ruled as a death from natural causes. Still, you can't deny that his death put money in her pocket. We believe that a lot more will be revealed in time as the case unfolds. Interestingly, Brandon's ex-wife, Melanie, has not faced any criminal charges in this case. According to her testimonies against Lori, Melanie had full knowledge that Charles was about to be killed the night before and said nothing. She also knew that Lori's children were actually worse than just missing early on and saying nothing. Maybe she struck a deal with the prosecutors, or maybe there wasn't any evidence against her that was sufficient enough to get a conviction.
As far as charges, it could be one of those things where all signs point to yes, but can you get a conviction? And that's why Chad wasn't charged in conspiracy with Charles Vallow's murder, is because even though he was aware, there was nothing that they felt they could prosecute where they would get a successful conviction, so he had no charges. It could be the same with both Melanies in this case.
The more the case unravels, the more sinister it all becomes. At first, these murders and failed attempts seem random, like Lori and Chad were solving each problem as they came. But when you actually explore the case deeper, you might find that everything was actually designed and carried out carefully. First, Charles Vallow was murdered. Lori skipped town, and just a few days later, her children disappeared. Then a few days after this, there is an attempt on Brandon Boudreaux's life. Still, on that timeline, Tammy Daybell died within a week of the attack on Brandon Boudreaux. It is now clear that a lot of planning went into these multiple homicides. In February 2019, Charles filed for a divorce. These court documents showed that Charles was scared for his life and that of the kids. At the time, the Gilbert police officers must not have taken his pleas for help seriously. He knew something in Lori had changed.
Charles Vallow, the now former and dead husband of the woman with a treasure trove of secrets.
I can't get in touch with my kids.
How old are your kids?
6.5 and 16. Okay.
How long have you been trying?
2 days.
This video, dated January 31st of 2019, shows Vallow telling two Gilbert police officers he just got back home from a work trip in Houston to find out he's locked out of his home, his truck missing from the airport, and none of his kids answering the phone. He suspects his wife, then Lori Vallow, is behind it all.
Lori had even threatened to kill him on multiple occasions, telling him that he was dark and other weird things that he could not understand.
He suspects his wife, then Lori Vallow, is behind it all.
She's lost her mind. I don't know how else to say it. We're LDS. She thinks she's a resurrected being and a god, and remember the 144,000. Jesus is coming next year. She took all the money out of her bank account today. Today, she said with Gabe on the phone, come take the kids. I don't care what happens to them. Come take them.
In Lori's words, "You are not Charles. I don't know who you are or what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now with my powers."
She said, you're not Charles. I don't know who you are, what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now with my powers.
You could say Vallow knew his fate. A few months later, he was killed, shot by his wife's brother, Alex Cox, who told investigators it was self-defense. Then, in December, Cox was found dead. The medical examiner's office says due to natural causes.
I love her to death. This is killing me, officer.
Oh, I can understand.
Our 13th anniversary next month. We've been at a great marriage. All of a sudden, the last month, it just blew up.
That night, Vallow asked police to escort him inside to check on his kids and wife together. They broke down a door, searched their home, but came up empty.
As for tonight, we don't have a crime. As a parent, she has the right to take her children, whether, who knows where she's at. We don't know where she's at. She has the right to take the children. You weren't home at the time.
On the 11th of July, Charles arrived at the Vallow family house in Chandler, Arizona, unaware that he was walking towards his death. Charles was supposed to drop JJ off at school that morning. Unfortunately, he went inside the home and ended up being shot dead by his brother-in-law, Alex Cox. After the shooting, Alex called the police and reported that he had just shot his brother-in-law in self-defense. When the police arrived at the scene, he explained that Lori and Charles got into a fight.
So you get in an argument? What is it over?
Well, it was over my sister. He was getting physical with her.
Alex then claimed he was protecting his sister when he shot Charles twice. Now we know that Lori and Tylee told similar stories, that it was self-defense, but we still think that the Arizona police could have picked up the red flags. To sway the investigation, Lori lied during the interview. Unfortunately, Tylee backs up her story. But even with this, there were big bright red flags that should not have been missed. For one, there is video footage that puts Lori at Burger King. Yes, this would actually mean that Lori Vallow might not have been at the scene of that shooting after all.
So you heard the shot?
Mm-hmm.
Did you actually see the shot, or did you just hear it?
I had gone around to the kitchen to get away from him, and so back around. So I don't know if you went in the house.
I didn't, so I'm like a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah.
According to her testimony, she goes into the kitchen. When she left the kitchen, she came out to meet Charles after he had been shot. For a woman whose husband has just been shot, Lori does not even stop to check his pulse or anything. She also doesn't call the police. Rather, she just walks past her dead husband on the floor and walks past her brother, who is standing there with a gun in his hand. She also gets in her car and drives off with the kids. First, a local fast food restaurant, where she orders breakfast for JJ. Then she goes shopping. Evidence shows that Lori Vallow buys some kind of shoes for JJ and takes him to school. At no point does she call Alex or the police. This is clearly a red flag.
I didn't see the shot. I heard it, and then I came back around and I saw that he was on the ground.
Okay.
And was freaking out.
Yeah.
And so I was just freaking out, and it just went into mom mode. I'm like, I've got to go to get JJ to school. I've got to get to the kids. I just felt like I got to get to the kids. And so I just went outside and to see if they were in there okay. I didn't want them coming back in the house when all that was going on. And got JJ in the car, and he was trying to come in, and Tylee was like looking at me with like the crazy eyes, like what just happened. And I told her to get in the car and we're going to take JJ to school. And I just left.
Most of the evidence is a little bit all over the place, but we know that we will be hearing much more concise information regarding the new charges against Lori Vallow Daybell in the coming months.